Good morning, it is day 7 of Vlogoween. Today is really packed, but it's also just like a really fun day. It's the homecoming, glare. Today classes are about 30 minutes long, which is the shortest that we've ever had them. I thought I would try something different with my students. I've never done a newsletter as a teacher before. It wasn't something that was ever high on my priority list for stuff that was important. I feel like I found other ways to talk to families and give them an update on like how their student is doing and what we've been up to in class. Usually I'm in the habit of reaching out to parents once a month, which is time intensive, but it does help me like connect with parents and kind of understand where they're coming from a little bit more. But I thought that something cool would be to do a newsletter, but instead of me making it, I have my students design and make it. So each student today has a choice. They can pick any topic of something that we've learned or done in class, and they get to design that portion of the newsletter. I'm going to very subjectively pick one that I think captures like the essence, the essential idea of that topic to put on the newsletter that we send home just by scanning it and like cropping it so that it's their words, not mine. I've only had first and second period so far, and all of the stuff that they're coming up with is like, yeah, like they get it. They get it. And it's just reassuring that like, okay, like it's been a month since you've looked at this topic, but you can still summarize it for other people. Okay, whew, we're good. Here are the possible topics that they could have chosen. It's also Reflection Friday today, so the first part of class is them writing me a letter anyway. This week's Truth Tuesday was about representation and how that affects what careers we might think are available to us. So I had my students, for their task for this week, think about what career fields they're interested in, and then look at the people that are like the leaders and innovators in that field and see if they can find somebody who shares any part of their identity with them. I'm going to talk about Brittany Packnett today, who I really look up to and admire a lot, and I look forward to seeing what my students came up with too. So that was kind of cool. And hopefully if my students were having a really hard time finding somebody who shares an identity marker with them that's also in the same career field they're interested in, that it'll kind of get them thinking about why representation is important and why, if they choose to be pioneers in that field, what that could do for other little kids who might be in 10th grade eventually and be thinking about, oh, I want to do this career, but I don't know if anybody who looks like me or talks like me or comes from my community has done this before. I have like 2 minutes before the bell's gonna ring, so I'm gonna prep for my class. And then with my homeroom, which is all seniors, which is amazing. I feel like every time I have some sort of advisory or homeroom, I always get upperclassmen, and my classes are always freshmen and sophomores, which is really fun. I love having seniors for stuff like this. So we'll have homeroom, and then we'll all go down to the football field, and I'll record some of the cool like skits and stuff that they have organized for our pep rally. I saw some of my students rehearsing the skits outside yesterday after school, and they looked so adorable. So I can't wait. It'll be a lot of fun, and it's gonna be like 2 hours. I love pep rallies, so I'm excited. It's gonna be like a 2-hour pep rally out on the football field. It's a bright sunny day, which is exciting. I will take my water bottle just in case. But yeah, I'm excited to share that with you all. So I just got home. The theme for homecoming this year was dancing through the decades, which is like a super cool dance theme. And a lot of it was just like decade themed, right? Like retro and vintage and stuff. And each class for Song and Yell comes up with a skit that they do. The sophomores were up first, and I was like, yay, sophomores, because like most of my students are sophomores. And they had the skit about the 90s, and they had like music from the 90s and like all these 90s clothes. And I was like, oh yeah, that's like a generation, that's like a decade now. That's like vintage now. It's been quite a while since it's been the 90s. And I was talking to Simone, and I was like, okay, you know what though, like this doesn't make me feel too old, because I was a child in the 90s, you know, like I was a baby in the 90s. And it's not like they're doing the 2000s, you know, like it's not like they're playing Kelly Clarkson. So then the sophomores finished and then the juniors were up and their theme was the 2000s. They started like doing stuff from the 2000s and their whole skit was about like, oh my gosh, like we have these flip phones, haha, so vintage. I felt so called out and I was like, oh my God. I know it's been 6 years and I know none of these kids have probably ever owned a flip phone in their life. But it was just so funny that like, oh God, even my teenage years are now so far behind me that they are a decade that are being parodied by the youth. And then, so another thing, when I was looking at the schedule to like plan the lesson for today, I noticed that all of the classes were 35 minutes, right? Wrong. So I'm in the middle of 5th period. It's been 35 minutes and the bell isn't ringing and I'm like, what's going on? So I looked at the schedule and I didn't take the time to add up the minutes for every single one. I just looked through the first half of the day and assumed that it would be the same all day, but alas, it was not. The last 2 periods were still hour-long periods, and the first 4 periods were 30-minute periods or 35-minute periods. And I was like, oh no, I did not plan for an hour's worth of stuff. It's a Friday. It's like, what am I gonna do? So with algebra, we were in the middle of a unit, so thankfully I just had the homework, so I was like, okay, so lucky you, I intentionally did not want to give you homework over the long weekend, so I'm giving you time in class to work on it. But with my geometry classes, we just finished a unit yesterday. With my 6th period class, after I shared my response about Reflection Friday, I was like, okay guys, so looking at the schedule, like I just basically explained to them the same thing that I explained to you, that like, so last period I was startled because I thought all classes were 35 minutes, but in fact they're not. So then I was like, yeah, so like we have an extra 30 minutes. And then one of my students was like, like immediately. And then I was like, okay, but, and then one of my other students was like, oh, so that just means that we have like extra time to make sure the newsletter is like really good. And then I was like, oh, yes, it does. You can actually spend some time and like draw some really cool things and add some really cool information. So take your time in making this. But if I see that you're working diligently for the first 35 minutes like I've planned, towards the last part of class, we can watch an episode from a kid's show of your choice. And I could just pull it up on Netflix. And I gave them an option between Pokemon, Phineas and Ferb, and SpongeBob. I was just so like happy with them. I feel like 6th period is one of those classes that's just always like near and dear to my heart, because I feel like the kids have so much energy in 6th period that like they're just so enthusiastic about everything. So they all like were like working diligently, and I was like, what was I worried about? Like, why would today be any different than any other day with this class, when any other day they like follow directions every time and are like fine. They're a great class. I love them. I love all of them. They all voted on Pokemon, and I was like, okay, like executive decision, we're watching the Indigo League. And they were like, oh, that's like, it's like the original one. And I was like, yes, that's the only reason, because I don't want to look at Pokemon that I haven't seen before. So we watched the episode with the Eevee brothers and the Eevee Evolution brothers. And the whole time, like I just have the episode playing, but all of the kids are just like, we can do another category if you want. Like, can we like draw other stuff? Can we add other things? Like, and they just continue to like make content summaries for the stuff they learned. And I was just like, damn, like, why am I not expecting them to want to do this? Does that tell me about myself as a teacher, that like my expectations are that like, oh my gosh, free time, and they're not. Like, they're invested, and they should be. I work really hard on investing them in their education. It's like, it's why we do Truth Tuesday and Reflection Friday. Like, of course they would. And I just felt kind of silly for expecting it to be stressful, when in reality, I feel like so far this year, the kids have been the least stressful part of my job. You know, the kids are just such a delight. I love teaching now that I know how to do it well. So after school, I went to a middle school to help out with their after school program. And I just did some like arts and crafts with the kids, and I ran into one of the kids that was at my elementary school last year, who's in 6th grade at this middle school now. So I got to catch up with him, which was really fun. Had some really weird conversations with some 6th graders about why we shouldn't say the things that Donald Trump says. Like, I think they think that it's like funny after watching these children kind of say some of the things that he says. I just am so over it. Like, I'm so over any media outlet that's giving him any attention. Kids pick this stuff up and they think it's okay to say stuff like this, and it's not. So yeah, so thank you for watching. I hope you've had a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.